What is up, family? Welcome into another edition of Make Every Second Count Live with me, your host, and international award winning Make Every Second Count speaker. Now, I'm so pumped up tonight, but we ask you guys if you would please share this episode out. Invite all kinds of people to watch it. Help us change the world. I know we can do that. Also, don't forget to keep the comments coming. We want to have more of a conversation than make a presentation. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. We will answer them for you. Don't forget to give us all kinds of thumbs up, hearts, frowny faces, cry faces. Heck, you can even get mad at us. I don't care. Just help us trick the algorithm on all of the socials that we're on. And then, with no further ado, I would like to bring to the stage Miss Leslie herself. Hey, Leslie, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Jeff. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm happy that you were able to fill in on such short notice. So thank you so much.
I celebrate spontaneity, so I loved that the invitation came up.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, if you would like to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, tell them who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Sure.
I'm going to be inviting a few people on my phone, so I'm looking down, but I am paying attention.
All right. As you mentioned, my name's Leslie Tankersley Arboleda. I am the owner and founder of a business named Aligned Living and Leadership. And I like to think of myself as the go to expert for creating alignment in your life. I support individuals and businesses and teams in identifying their natural energetic strengths and then leveraging them to achieve their goals. Because I believe that with aligned living and leadership, you can have it all.
That's awesome. I believe that people can have it all as well. I just believe that we aren't necessarily taught the way to have it all. And I think a lot of people don't have it all because, well, they feel they don't have it all, but they really do, I think. So, if you would, all right, hang on. I got to take a step back here for a minute because I about got ahead of myself. So, when I was 17, I was involved in a very serious car accident. I spent 2.5 months in a coma and 3.5 in the hospital. I wasn't supposed to be walking right now, but guess what? I am. And I want you guys to know that whatever you're going through, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So we like to talk about things we have gone through, overcame, or are going through at the moment. So, is there anything that you have had to grow through?
I love that you describe it that way, Jeff. I think all of our challenges and struggles give us an opportunity to grow or not. And at the end of the day, the choice is ours. I am halfway to 98, and I have definitely experienced a lot of trials and tribulations in the last 49 years. As a younger person in particular, a child of divorce pretty young. My dad was a infidelitous alcoholic, so there was lots of stories to rewrite as the child of someone who was making those choices. And then he died when I was 21, which definitely brought another layer of opportunity for growth. I was listening to a couple of your podcast episodes earlier today and thinking about how much you magnetize people that I really relate to. Growth through grief is definitely something that resonates with me.
Wow,
Um,
I don't know that a lot of guests actually do that, but thank you.
Mhm. Well, like I said, I celebrated this opportunity, so I wanted to make sure I was in the right audience.
Very cool.
And then I think there's around 30 or so, I figured out that I was holding the pen of the story I'm living, and I could write it any damn way I choose. So
Yeah.
I started to reflect on less about the challenges and the struggles and more about putting my focus on the things that make me feel good and the things that make me feel empowered, because those traumatic experiences certainly are a part of my story. But my mother also married a tremendously generous man when I was 5, and he provided us a lifestyle of privilege, luxury, and ease. I have experienced lots of different beautiful opportunities to travel the world and meet new people. I'm, as my 16-year-old likes to say, I'm thrice degreed. So I've got 3 different degrees, and I was, blessed with the opportunity to be educated. And finally, in my 40s, I figured out how to fuse all of that experience and education into something that really feels aligned with what my purpose is.
That is so cool. I forget who says the quote, but they talk about we should be afraid to die until we make a lasting impression on humankind, or we better humankind in some way. And I feel that is what you are doing.
I appreciate that. I hope so. That's definitely the goal. I want to leave the world a better place.
Yes, that's completely understandable. Now, you were talking a little bit about your father was an he cheated on your mother,
He sure
and
did.
he was an alcoholic.
Hmm.
So, how exactly did he not treat you right in the time he was alive?
I think it was less about conscious choices, right? There was no abuse, there was nothing like that. I think it was more about understanding that at, even at the age of 3, that there was something more important to my father than being a supportive guide, which as a parent myself, I feel like that's one of our certainly a burdensome privilege sometimes, but one of our biggest privileges as a parent is standing in a supportive role and really letting the people that we've made understand that they are important and they are worthy of feeling the unconditional love. I think he, like everyone, truly, I do believe, was doing the best he could with what he had in the moment. But certainly in reflection, there was a lot of opportunity for improvement. I can remember being very young and after my parents divorced and waiting hours and hours and hours after I thought daddy was going to show up to take me somewhere, and thinking about, even now it kind of hurts my heart a little bit to think about leaving a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old waiting, not understanding that, even as their best effort shows up, he was a grown ass adult. He could have been on time. He could have followed through with what he said he was going to do, and he didn't, which has a lasting impact on a child. And certainly I can only speak to my experience, but for me, it took a lot of really conscious rewriting of the story I was living to know that I am worthy of unconditional love. I am worthy of keeping the company of people who follow through and, stay true to their word and mean what they say and say what they mean. So I think that's really more of what I think about when I think about the impact of that part of my story.
Now, you said something very interesting there that I find to be I don't know what the word is right now, but so I've been having issues thinking of words at times now, and that's strange. It's because I'm learning too many words. But you said that now I forget that too.
It'll come back if it's supposed to, Jeff.
Yeah, but so how did you learn to move on with your life?
I think it was really the combination of a lot of different micro experiences, not some huge aha one day, one moment, and my life was forever changed, but more of a progressive culmination of lots of different experiences, lots of information, lots of study, right? I am hardwired to learn a little bit about a lot of things, and then I figured out how to integrate them in a way that felt empowering. So, I would say it was probably in my early 30s when I finally realized there was even something that needed changing, which I think is probably the first step that I share with um, most of the people in my life, whether I'm working with them or whether we have a personal relationship. If you're not willing to be courageously honest and a bit vulnerable with yourself and really look at the parts of your life, your story, your choices that aren't serving you, you're going to live and die making those same choices over and over and over again. So it was probably in my early 30s when I finally figured out that I was actually in control of the experience I was having, and I didn't have to keep repeating those habits and cycles and patterns of thought. And it requires some practice. It requires some conscious effort and then some willingness to not do it perfectly, right? I celebrate the mistakes. I tell people failure is my second favorite F word. It's where all the learning happens. But that's part of what it's about, is making a conscious choice, knowing that you're worthy of something bigger and better than whatever it is you're experiencing, and then taking the making the strides to go do the thing, whatever that looks like. So if it's education, if it's more education, awesome. If it's keeping a different community, right? That's also a really important choice. Alignment by what is it they say, assimilation by association is a real
Yeah.
thing. We become like the people we spend time with, and if we're spending time with people who are living lives like the ones we want to have, we're more likely to achieve the life we want to live.
Um, that is so true. So I first of all want to point out that we have Robert Brooker in the comments, and he says hi, Leslie. And then he says he's grateful that he remembered to watch this. He was only slowed down by an unexpected pit stop. Well, I hope that pit stop was a good one, because you missed some important stuff, Robert. But Robert is actually from Canada, so this is an international show now.
Go Robert.
Woo! No, go us. Forget Robert. So, what? All right. What would you say is the best way to find the people that you should assimilate with?
I Not to get too woo woo on you, Jeff, but I think it has to do with energy and frequency. I think, I'm a bit of a spiritual warrior for sure, but I'm also a science geek. So I love to talk about the physics of relationships, right? I've got a degree in psychology. I understand how the brain works. I understand how people relate to each other. But I think what excites me most about it is understanding how the expression of who we are creates a resonance, just like radio waves, right?
Yeah.
We're both old enough to remember those tuner radios where you had to twist to listen to a different station, right?
Well,
And when you
I'm
heard-
not.
Well,
I
you
always
know someone who's old like me, right?
yeah, I always had buttons on my radio.
But when we tune to a certain station, we listen to a certain tune. That doesn't make all of the other music and all of the other radio frequencies out in the world disappear. It's just the
Mhm.
one that we're tuned into. And I think the same is true with the relationships we maintain. When we emanate a certain frequency, when we emanate a certain combination of energies, we create a resonance and we magnetize the people into our lives who have that similar or complementary expression. We're 60s and 70s, we talked about what vibes and frequencies and all of that stuff. But in 2025,
Yeah.
right? I celebrate being a happy hippie. But in 2025, we have scientific equipment that can measure the electrical frequency of our brain waves.
Yeah.
We have scientific equipment that can measure the actual magnetic field emanating from our heart space.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about adding electricity to a magnet, you create an electromagnet, which is so much more powerful in the way that it magnetizes things to it, right? So I think there's something to be said for understanding that we're all walking around in these magnetic meat suits with these invisible antennas on our head, picking up frequencies and broadcasting frequencies, and understanding that it's not some woo-woo BS. It's really about how we're showing up in the world and how we're showing up in our relationships.
All right. Now you have piqued my interest. So I know from like when I have watched some of these people like Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's always talking about tuning into a certain frequency and things. How exactly? Because I'm always wanting to ask him, but I have no shot of asking him. So, how exactly can someone make sure they are tuning into the right frequencies to attract what they want?
I believe it has to do with our focus, right? Where we're putting our focus creates a thought pattern in our brain.
Yeah.
And one of my teachers teaches that that's how we turn energy into light. If you think about the electromagnetic frequencies in your body, think about the electrical current in your brain, you're literally, when you have a thought, it creates a frequency. That frequency has an actual light to it, right? It creates a photon storm in your brain, which releases these neurochemicals that gives us this physical sensation in this body we're walking around. And then we put a meaning, right? We use the psychology and we put a meaning on that physical sensation. We call it a feeling. And if it's a feeling we like, or it's a feeling that's familiar, we do more of that thought process that creates this feedback loop between our bodies and our brains. I think that is how we're creating the frequency of our aura, of our experience, of our personality, really, right? Like you walk into a room, or someone walks into a room you're in, and you just feel different. Good, bad, curious, whatever the feeling is, but the feeling changes because the energy of me and the energy of you are both unique. And then when we mix that, commingle our energies, we create this third thing that's we. And that's also unique. And I think that's really where the magic happens. And that's where the empowerment happens. If we're mindful, if we're aware of where we're putting our focus and what thoughts we're creating, we're ultimately in charge of how we create our frequency. And then that, I think, kind of in a domino effect, magnetizes other people who resonate at a similar frequency. And that's how we find ourselves in alignment or not, right? There is, as much as I love this, I'm not so much of a spiritual Pollyanna, as my husband calls me, that I think it's all rainbows and butterflies. But I do think that there is real magic to the science of how human beings show up in the world. And I think that's what it looks like.
Wow. Honestly, yeah.
The first time I heard it, I
Yeah,
was like, "Oh, that's what it means."
yeah,
That's mind body connection. Holy moly!
yeah. It's so crazy to me that some people actually know what they're talking about. Like, all right, with this, with the whole mind, body, spirit, woo woo stuff, I'm out in left field. But I'm glad that somebody is able to explain it in a easier to understand way, which I find to be enlightening, because I don't like it when people always make things difficult to understand. They use these big words that people don't get. And I think they do that to seem smarter than they really are. But it's like, make it where people can actually understand it. And that's one of the things that I like to do in my work is just meet a person where they are. Because if you don't meet them where they are now presently, then it's not going to stick.
I
So
I couldn't agree more, Jeff.
I'm just curious. So if you had, say, 3 ideas for other people that are dealing with something to get in a better headspace or to get in better vibrations or whatever you want to call it, how exactly would they approach that?
I think it would depend on how far away from where they want to be they are. I think it's important to know that, again, if the journey is a lot farther for one person than it is for the other, the tools and the resources they need might look differently. I use a system of self-understanding called quantum human design,
Oh,
which is a fusion of a variety of different other systems of self-understanding. I love sharing human design with folks because it talks about our hardwiring. So, kind of like this computer I'm sitting in front of, I've got this big box on the floor, and when I push the power button down here, my screen up here lights up. And the reason that happens is because there's a connection between the button and the screen. There's a connection within us, our place of fear, our place of emotional feedback, our place of identity, our place of willpower, our ability to manifest, communicate, process, connect with. All of these different parts of ourselves are connected very similarly to this hard drive down here. And being able to look at a blueprint that shows you what makes you a once in a lifetime unique cosmic event is pretty powerful. And then, similarly to having a map to navigate terrain you've never walked in before, you get to move through life with a bit more ease. So I think it's important for people to, you asked for 3, I would say it would be important to know where you are and where you want to go. I think it would be important to understand what are your natural strengths that will get you there with the most ease. And then I think it's important to be surrounded by an aligned community, a supportive community that can hold you up when you fall down and can cheer you on when you roar ahead. I think those are probably what I would identify as the top 3 important parts. And then, I could probably riff on 1,000 others, but I think that's really the fundamental part: the energetics, the awareness, and then the community.
yeah, wow, that is so cool. So, what, all right, let's say somebody out there is having a hard time finding a job. They worked at one company for a long time and they made enough money that the company said, okay, it's time to get rid of this guy. And how exactly could they approach trying to find a new job in your mind?
I work with a lot of folks who are either entrepreneurs or in transition or parts of teams in larger companies. And I think the answer is always the same, really. Because again, we are a unique once in a lifetime cosmic event, but we're also not that special. There's 8 billion human beings walking around on the planet, and we're all walking around in these magnetic meat suits. I know,
I'm
spoiler
not
alert.
that special.
No, you're beautiful and unique, but you're not that special because
Oh,
because we all have this fundamental sameness. There's the thing that animates me is the same energy that animates you. It just shows up in a beautifully unique way. So I would say to your newly unemployed friend, if they wanted to do the same thing in a new place, it would be different than if they wanted to recreate themselves doing something different in a new way. And again, not to sound too redundant, but to fall back on what are the energetics that empower you to be in an aligned place. Because I think it really all boils down to alignment. And I tell people I selfishly talk about alignment and all the places that people will listen to me talk about it
Yeah.
because I want to live in a world filled with people making aligned choices. I want people to be doing what it is that they're here to do that gets them to that birthright that is all of ours. We're
All
as
right,
human
hang
beings.
on just a minute. But
Yeah.
so not to sound stupid, but like I said, I want to make this as simple as I can. So, can you explain what an aligned person is compared to an unaligned person?
Sure. I would say if you're experiencing anger, frustration, bitterness, or disappointment, you're making a misaligned choice somewhere in your life. And that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. And that's not an invitation to blame or shame yourself or someone else. It is an opportunity to look at what is the source of the anger, the frustration, the bitterness, and the disappointment, and then use that as a cue, right? It's the catalyst, it's the thing that's going to make us go, oh, wait a minute. And then a clue on what needs to be changed. So a misaligned person is someone who's not experiencing their birthright of health, joy, and abundance.
Yeah.
Short answer.
Wow. All right. Sorry for interrupting you.
Did
I
that create clarity?
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly did. So we have Chris in the comments from YouTube saying, look up a book called Beyond a Pale White Horse, or Behold a Pale White Horse. It is banned or outlawed because the information. All right, I don't know.
I think Chris
That's
is telling us to go find the book because it's got some stuff that's super secret and really enjoyable.
all right. Yeah,
That's how I interpreted that.
yeah, okay. But I don't know. So I want to say thank you so much for coming on here tonight. I know this was short notice and it was a shorter conversation that I hope everybody gained some clarity and alignment through. But I need everybody out there, including you, Leslie, to do me a favor. I need you to make every second count. Why? Because you never know when your seconds will run out on your one life. I'll see you guys back here next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And until then, stay aligned and have a fantastic week. Thanks again, Leslie.
Thank you, Jeff.
Have a great one. Awesome.